And I think for some more details about the regulatory aspects of this, I'm going to kick it back to Raheem.
Thanks, Ned. As we've discussed over the first half of this presentation, there's these set of reconciliations that's now legally mandated by different regulatory regimes. CFTC, EMIR EU, EMIR UK coming up later in September. And they necessitate a lot of complexity that we think is really difficult to understand, much less put into practice. What you're seeing here are two specific swim lanes. On the left-hand side, you're seeing what the K3 module will essentially perform for you. And on the right-hand side, this swim lane represents the output of the K3 reconciliation process. Now, the reconciliation process necessitates connecting to one or more SDRs. Sometimes we have market participants who trade in different asset classes reporting to different repository systems. So it's important that the K3 reconciliation module can connect to all of the varying different SDRs that are out there that service regulatory reporting. This workflow diagram also represents something that you would have to enact on your own to simply be in compliance with the new verification and reconciliation requirements. And that is the ability to ingest data from your ETRM or CTRM and the various different fields, but creation data, your valuation data, whether collateral is being held, each of these groups require different sets of fields. And the K3 module will essentially ingest all of the necessary fields without having you do any of the heavy lifting. With this broad pre-reconciliation tool, EPAM can actually assist you to automate this process and configure those field tags that are needed for these various groups, compare them against the data ingested from the SDR, and generate a report that allows you to understand what those discrepancies are. So you don't have to understand the complexities, rather put your compliance team's focus more on how to rectify and how to read the report and rectify the discrepancies generated by the tool. Now, once K3 Recon generates the verification reports and identifies those discrepancies, you still have to deal with that on several fronts. The first is understanding what the data is and what those discrepancies are, and then putting together a remediation plan. But more importantly, as Ned was mentioning, having write-back capabilities as required by the rules to ensure that those comparison results are then ingested back into your ETRM. Now, EPAM can help you with both sides of the coin here, not just making sure that your K3 Recon module is configured correctly to ensure the correct mappings are in place and comparing apples to apples, but also ensure that your entire compliance process is optimized and streamlined. If there are discrepancies, we can advise you on how to go forward in order for you to be fully compliant. Ned, I'm going to hand this over to you so you can speak about some of the other use cases.
Thank you. So these last couple slides, we'll just quickly touch on a few common use cases for the REC tool that are not related to compliance. So this first one is for making sure that you've booked all your trades into your ETRM so that you can mark your curves and close out your day. In this one, K3 typically connects to your FCM or FCMs, flows an end-of-day trade file, and then flows the daily trades from your ETRM and reconciles the two to make sure that they match. In this case, if there are diffs, the right groups follow up with the FCMs or brokers to resolve anything that was identified from that day. And I think if we bounce to the next slide, we will see among the many reasons that it's important to do a trade reconciliation is because it's the precursor to the fees reconciliation. This could be executing broker fees, clearing broker fees on a daily basis. On a monthly basis, we reconcile exchange fees and repository fees for our customers. So when it comes to fees, one source of the data, again, will be an ETRM. The second source could be a few different things. It could be fee data pulled from another system, such as an accounting or billing system. We also have customers that we work with where we build an internal broker fee calculator in K3. So K3 stores that logic that becomes the second source of data for that reconciliation. And then last but not least, this is our final slide. This would be another daily reconciliation where we connect to the FCMs. This one's not for trade data. This is for collateral and valuation data. And this would be compared against the collateral and valuation data from your ETRM. If your internal calculations don't match what the FCM is saying, then the right groups will work internally, either with your FCMs or brokers to resolve any kind of discrepancies there. And I believe that's all I have.
Thanks, Ned. Just wanted to conclude by kind of just recapping a bunch of what's been said on the call today. I think that, as Raheem has detailed for us, there's newfound compliance imperatives to undertake reconciliation. Part of that is much more vigorous enforcement of pre-existing rules in the US, as evidenced by large fines recently levied by the CFTC. In addition, a whole bunch of regimes, including Europe and the UK, are rolling out similar verification mandates this year. So there's a regulatory necessity to undertake reconciliation and more complicated reconciliations than has been needed previously. As Raheem also noted, some of these actually pertain to retroactively. So if you think that you just need to apply this on a go-forward basis, that might not be correct. So we recommend that folks who are interested in getting advisory services related to reconciliation get in touch with EPAM. And I think EPAM has partnered with Broadpeak to use the K3 tool that we've described here today. And with that, I'll kick it over to Shannon to see if there are questions.
Thank you, Toby. Wow, definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things this morning. So thank you both, or all of you, Toby, Alan, Ned, and Raheem. I do want to open it up for Q&As, question and answers. You may put it in the Q&A section. I do see one right now, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this out. Anyone can answer this. Repositories are required to have a reconciliation tool. Why do we need K3 reconciliation? Raheem, I think you're trying to talk and you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I can take that one if it's okay with the team. So that's a really good question and one that I've actually dealt with in the past. The SDRs are mandated to actually provide capabilities to ensure that the reporting counterparty actually has access to their data. So, for example, under the CFTC rules, Part 49 explicitly mandates that in order for the SDR to comply with the CFTC revisions, the SDR has to provide either a way for them to extract the data via an API automated solution, or using an Excel spreadsheet so they can manually extract the data. But their obligation is only for them to be able to provide that access to that data. What they're not obligated to do is actually perform the reconciliation against the reporting counterparty's system of record. And that's really where the K3 reconciliation tool comes into play, which actually automates that entire process without you having to understand all the data elements involved in the comparison, what kind of mappings and translations have to be done before it can actually be compared against your system of record. So in short, the SDR's obligation is to simply give you access to the data, but they're not required to actually perform the reconciliation against your system of record.
Thank you, Raheem. I have another
Absolutely.
question. How long does it take K3 reconciliation to be implemented? It's open to anyone that would like to answer that.
Sure, I'll jump on that. So typically it could be a number of weeks. I'm not going to give the number or the lawyer answer that it depends, but of course it depends. As we discussed, all of what we're talking about is out of the box. None of this is customized. So all in all, it's a pretty quick setup, and that's a big part of the value.
Thank you, Ned. Again, I want to encourage you to ask any questions. This is your chance. I do see one more in the Q&A. How do I know if I fall subject to these EMIR reconciliation requirements.
Well,
Anybody want to answer that? Okay.
Yeah, how about I'll take that one if it's okay. It's all contingent on where you fall in EMIR's hierarchy, whether you're a non-financial counterparty or financial counterparty, whether you're trading OTC derivatives or if you're trading exchange traded derivatives. The EMIR rules are, in comparison to CFTC, they're very different in terms of what's required from a reconciliation process. Depending on whether you're trading OTCs or ETDs, the rules are different. Depending on whether you're an NFC versus an FC, the rules are different. So I think a more appropriate answer here, more from as Ned was saying, like what a lawyer would say, it's really contingent on where you fall in that hierarchy and what trades you're executing in the market. So maybe if whoever's asking that question, it's let's touch base and maybe we can perform some sort of compliance assessment and analyze exactly what you're doing today to really help you understand what your obligations are.
I think it's worth adding to that there are some entities, especially in Europe, that are obligated to do this verification that might not necessarily be the original reporting entity. So I think that's especially a strong reason to really kind of conduct a more rigorous analysis as to whether or not you are subject to the verification mandate.
Toby.
Thank you. Okay, I have another question in the chat. EMIR Refit has gone, I probably said that wrong, EMIR Refit has gone live April 29th. What are the key questions you've received since that date?
Yeah, that's a great question. So while the changes have gone live, everyone's expecting like, hey, the work is done. We can go home. Everyone's happy, right? Or perhaps not, because a lot of the questions that we're seeing now is how do we perform those required reconciliation that's mandated by the EMIR refit? More importantly, if you've gone through a lot of the pains and struggles that you had to ensure compliance with EMIR refit, how are you proactively preparing for the UK refit that's coming down the pipeline in September? One of the key questions we're continuously being asked is, we want to ensure the accuracy of what we're reporting. We want to ensure that errors are corrected in a timely manner based on the new requirements. If there's a more automated process to do so, what is that? How do we optimize our existing processes? What I've seen is that market participants are really just making sure that they're complying and from a going forward basis and doing the bare minimum. And so now they're actually taking the time to reassess their compliance frameworks and seeing where they can actually make those necessary changes to automate or optimize. So those are really the questions are really around that area now.
Thank you, Raheem.
Toby and Ned, I know that you guys have kind of dealt with the same thing. Did you guys have any insight on what customers are asking now in terms of automation or anything else for that matter, post go live?
Well, unique product identifier is obviously one of the big themes of these rules. So I think we've spent a fair amount of time on that. There are a few different approaches that we've come up to depending on how many different products our customers trade. You can kind of have a scaled down solution or the full blown thing to come up with the UPIs. But that would be the main thing that I've dealt with.
Actually, I just recalled something else as well. The different types of what constitutes a derivative contract. A lot of market participants don't even understand whether their trade is actually deemed a reportable transaction or not. So take VPPAs, for example. If basically EMIR, what the rules prescribe is that if you're trading a contract that is financially settled, then long story short, that constitutes regulatory reporting. So if your VPPA or any exotic contract is financially settled, then let's definitely have a conversation after this call with myself or Ned, and we can advise you on whether those specific contracts that you're trading actively today are actually reportable contracts or not. So that's another area that we've been dealing with as well.
Thank you. Okay, I have another question in the chat or in the Q&A. If we funded corporates with their admin armies are often struggling to onboard regs changes and build processes to comply, how on earth are the regulators dealing with bigger trade and volumes in data?
I think I could take that one.
That's-
That's an excellent question. I think that part of the reason why these mandates have gone through is to ensure the integrity and robustness of the data of the data that regulators have at their disposal. So rather than having to manually clean it up themselves, they're essentially bestowing that obligation onto the originally reporting participants via this reconciliation and verification mandate. So I think that the intent here is actually to make life easier for the regulators so that they can understand their data more clearly. Raheem, do you have anything to add to that? You're on mute.
The onus is even more on the SDR as well now. To your point, so it's both. Where the SDRs are now, before under the when Dodd-Frank or EMIR refit went, EMIR regulations went live 10 years ago, the rules were a bit ambiguous on how they're going to be able to manage and mitigate risk on the market and increase transparency. Now the rules are very prescribed, very definitive in terms of what the SDRs themselves are obligated to do and how they're supposed to provide that access to the data to the regulators so that way they can effectively mitigate risk and increase market transparency. So it's two-part as well. So yeah, I just wanted to add some color to that.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Raheem. I don't have any other questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. I believe it's to Alan.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Really appreciate everybody hanging in there. Love the questions. Great questions. That was fantastic. Toby, Ned, Raheem, really appreciate y'all's leadership and kind of taking us through this, walking us through this information. I want to recap or just kind of mention once again, if anybody worries about should I report or is this a concern, it's a simple conversation. Might require a little bit of detail, but please reach out to Toby or myself. We'll get the appropriate people there, look through whatever issue it is that you have and resolve it straight away and give you the best answer that we have. With that, thank you everybody. And we look forward to anybody who's interested in the US version, North America version of this next week. Thanks everybody.